Hello guys, welcome to my channel. This is ZTech. So, in this video, I'm going to teach you the basic introduction to computer, everything you need to know about a computer in terms of its basics. So, in this video, I'm going to teach you everything. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, just take a minute to subscribe to my channel and then like this video. So, without taking due time, let's start. So, what is a computer? What is a computer? Basic question. So, the answer to that is a computer is an electronic device. A computer is an electronic device operating under the control of instructions stored in its own memory that can accept data, which is called an input, and then process the data according to useful specified rules, produce the information, which is the output, and store that information for future use. So basically, a computer is an electronic device. It operates under the control of instructions. So it operates under the control given to it, under the instructions given to it, and it can accept data and then process that data according to specified rules, and then produce useful information, and it can also store that information for future use. So that's a computer. That's the definition of a computer in a nutshell. So now let's go move forward. Let's go next to the functionalities of a computer. What does a computer do? So these slide, we're going to talk about the functionalities of a computer. So without too much time, any digital computer carries out 5 functions in gross terms. Any digital computer carries out 5 functions in gross terms. The first thing is that it takes data as input. It takes data as input. Sorry for this. It takes data as input and then stores that data. It stores the data and instructions in its memory and use them when required. It stores the data, it stores the instruction in its memory and use them when required. It also processes the data and converts it into useful information. Mind you, useful information. It also generates the output. So a computer controls all the above 4 steps that we just mentioned, starting from taking data as an output, as an input, and storing the data instructions in its memory and using them when required, processing the data, converting them into useful information, and then generating the output. Computers carries out all these four steps that you just mentioned. So from these picture that you're seeing here, it's just a little bit of an illustration about how a computer manipulates data. So it accepts data, accepts the input, process it, and then convert it to an information. So that's basically what a computer does. So the next slide here, let's talk about the components of a computer. What are the components of a computer? So computer consists of a hardware and a software. So we're going to talk about what is a hardware and what is a software in details in the next slide. So let's start with the hardware. What is a hardware? What is a hardware? So a hardware is a computer hardware is a collection of physical elements. It is a collection of physical elements, tangible objects that you can see and touch physically. Mind you, it is the physical elements of a computer, things that you can see and touch, the collection of that. So it constitutes a computer system, the actual machinery, wires, transistors, and circuits that you can see and touch in a computer. So those are what uh, those are referred to as the hardware, starting from the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor, um, everything that you can see and touch, and all those things that make up a computer, uh, uh, from the hard disk inside, the RAM inside, the ROM inside, the fan inside, everything that makes a computer a computer. So those, I mean the tangible objects. So those are the hardware. Those are the hardware. Then those are the hardware. So um, let's talk about the software now. What is a software? What is a software? So a software are the computer programs. They are the programs in a computer, and in other words, they are the instructions and data given to a computer. They are the instructions and the data given into the computer. So that's a software in a nutshell. All the applications that we use, starting from Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Photoshop, um, you can name it. Everything that you know that we use to manipulate any software that you know that we use to manipulate a computer is called a software. Even the operating system in a computer that makes the computer to function, it is also called a software. It is also called a software. So now let's talk about uh, computer units. Computer units. So here we're going to talk about the input unit, central processing unit, primary memory unit, secondary storage unit, output unit, and so on and so forth. So let's start with the input unit. So in the input unit we have input devices. What are input devices? What is an input device, or what are input devices? So input device is any peripheral or piece of computer hardware equipment to provide data and control signals to an information processing system such as a computer. So a computer is an also information processing system or other information appliance. So any any peripheral piece of computer hardware equipment that is used to provide data, that is used to provide control signals to an information processing system such as a computer or other information appliance. So anything as such is called an input device. So an input device translates data from form that humans understand. It translates data from form that humans understand to one that the computer can work with. So most common example of an input device is the keyboard and the mouse. So we use the keyboard to input data into the computer. We also use mouse to navigate through the computer. So uh, that's input devices in a nutshell. So in the next slides, we're going to talk more about the input devices. So here so here is just talking about the computer units in general, but let's see these pictures here where they give us examples of input devices. So the first one here, we have a keyboard, we have numeric keypad, we have pointing device, we have remote control, we have joystick, we have touch screen, we have scanner, graphics tablet, microphone, digital camera, webcams, light pens, and so on and so forth. So all of these are examples of input devices. There are other more that are not mentioned here. So more examples. We have touch screen, we have keyboard, touchpads, graphic tablets, video capture hardware, barcode reader is also an input device, gamepad is also an input device, a scanner is an input device, MIDI keyboard, cameras, microphone, digital camera, electronic whiteboard, webcam, pen input, trackballs, joystick, electronic whiteboard, you name it. All of these are examples of input devices. So, an important note here is that the most common used keyboard is the QWERTY keyboard. So, you know that you need to know that keyboards are of different types. There are different types of keyboard. So, the common used keyboard and the modern day now that we're living in, that is more prevalent, is the QWERTY keyboard. Is the QWERTY keyboard. So a keyboard is referring to the first alphabetical words to the left of a keyboard. So it's QWERTY. So which is the generally standard. Okay. Generally standard keyboard has 104 keys. So the standard keyboards that we're using, it has 104 keys. You can count them if you want. So now let's talk about the central processing units. Central processing unit, which I consider the heart of the computer. So central processing unit is the CPU. So it is known as the microprocessor or processor. It is responsible for all functions and processes. It is responsible for all functions in a computer, and processes. So the CPU has components, have component is consists of some things. So what are those things? The CPU is comprised of three main parts. Firstly, the ALU, which is the arithmetic and logical unit, logic unit. Number two, control units, and then we have registers, which stores the data that is to be executed next. So we're going to talk about each one of these in the next slide. So let's start with the ALU, which is the arithmetic and logical unit. So the functions of an ALU is the functions of ALU are arithmetic and logical unit, and logic unit executes all arithmetic and logical operations in a computer. It executes all arithmetic and logical operations that you know in a computer, starting from addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So it also carries out logical operation like comparing of numbers, comparing of letters or special characters. So that's just arithmetical logical unit in a nutshell. So now let's go straight to the control unit. What is a control unit and what does it do? A control unit controls and coordinates computer component. It controls and coordinates computer component. It reads the code for the next instruction to be executed. It increments the program counter, so it points to the next instruction. It read whatever data the instruction requires from cells in computer. It provides the necessary data to an ALU or register. If the instruction requires an ALU or specialized hardware to complete, instruct the hardware to perform the requested operation. So these are the functions of a control unit. Now let's go to a register. What is a register? So a register stores the data that is to be executed next. It stores the data that is to be executed next. Very fast storage area. It is very fast to you. You need to know that it is very fast. It stores the data that is to be executed next. So in that case, it is very fast. So now let's talk about the memory, the primary memory in a computer system. The primary memory in a computer system. So the primary memory, it has two components. It has firstly the RAM and secondly the ROM. So when we're going to talk about these two primary memory, we're going to talk about them in the next slide. So starting from the RAM, what is RAM? So RAM is an abbreviation of random access memory. Is a short term for random access memory. And a random access memory is a memory scheme within the computer system which is responsible for storing data on a temporary basis. Mind you, on a temporary basis, not on permanent basis, so that it can be promptly accessed by the processor as and when needed. So it is also volatile in nature, which means that data will be erased once supply to the storage device is turned off. Increase the the let me increase it so that it can be seen more. So it is volatile in nature, which means that data will be erased once supply to the storage device is turned off. Whenever the power supply to that computer is disabled, then the information in a RAM, in a random access memory, is lost. It is wiped off. So a RAM stores data randomly, and the processor accesses these data randomly from the RAM storage. A RAM is considered random access. Why? Why is random access memory considered as random access? Because you can access any memory cell directly if you know the row and column that intersect at that cell. So you now know why a random access memory is called a random access. Then the next thing in primary memory that we have is a ROM. ROM is a short term for read-only memory. So, a read-only memory is a permanent form of storage. ROM stays active regardless of whether power supply to it is turned on or off. Whether the power supply is turned off, whether it is disabled or enabled, the storage, the information, the data in it is still available. It will still remain there. So ROM devices do not allow data stored on them to be modified. You can't modify anything in a ROM. You can only see it and leave it. You can't modify, you can't change anything in it. So that's the difference between a RAM and a ROM. RAM stores data temporarily. Any data in a RAM is volatile. So it means whenever the power supply to the computer is disabled, so then the information in a RAM is lost, while a ROM is permanent. So anything in a RAM in a ROM is permanent. The whether there is power supply, whether the power supply is disabled or not, the information in it, the data in it, is still available. But you can't modify anything inside a ROM. You can only see it. Now let's talk about the secondary memory. The secondary memory in a computer. So, what is a secondary memory computer? A secondary memory in a computer is the one that stores data. It stores data and programs permanently. It stores it permanently. It's retained after the power is turned off. Anything stored in the secondary memory is retained after the power is turned off. Is the same as ROM. So we have different types of secondary memory, but we have three examples here. So we have three main examples here, starting from hard disk, optical disk, flash memory. Now we're going to talk about the hard disk first. So what is a hard disk? A hard disk is called disk drive or HDD. It's called disk drive or HDD. You can call it any one of the two. So a hard disk stores and provides relatively quick access to large amounts of data. A hard disk stores data. It stores and provides relatively quick access to large amounts of data. The difference between a hard disk and a ROM is that a hard disk can store a large amount of data, up to 1 terabyte or even more than that. So while a ROM just stores just a limited amount of data. So a hard disk stores a large amount of data, and it stores data on an electromagnetically charged surface or set of surfaces. So it stores data on an electromagnetically charged surface or set of surfaces. And then another example of secondary memory is an optical disk and flash. So what is an optical disk? An optical disk is a disk drive that uses laser light. It uses laser light to store data. So there are three main types of optical media that we know. We have there are three main popular. We have CD, we have DVD, and we have Blu-ray disc. So the first one, the CD, is a short term for compact disc, which can store up to 700 megabytes. It can store up to 700 megabytes. Mostly CD stores music and audio files. So while DVD is a short term for digital video disc, and it can store up to 8.4 gigabytes. It can store up to 8.4 gigabytes. And we have the best of them all, which is Blu-ray disc, which can store up to 50 gigabytes. It can store up to 50 gigabytes of data in it. So that's optical disc. So now we have in the secondary memory, we have hard disk, we have optical disk, flash memory. So now let's talk about a flash disk. We haven't talked about the flash disk, sorry. So a flash disk is a storage module made of flash memory chips. A flash disk have no mechanical plates or access arms, but the term disk is used because the data are accessed as if they were on hard disk, as if they were on a hard drive. So you can see that whenever you are using your flash disk, it's just as the same as a hard disk. It's just as the same as a hard disk. The just difference is the only difference between flash disk is that is the flash disk module. It is made up of flash memory chips, while we know that the hard disk is it stores data on an electromagnetically charged surface. So you can see the difference between the two. So the disk storage structure of a flash disk is emulated. Structure is emulated. Sorry. So now let's talk about the difference, or let's compare a RAM and hard disk. So what are the differences between RAM as a main memory and HDD as a secondary memory? So here we're going to talk about this. So to the left we see our memory, our RAM. RAM is just a memory, and then hard disk is a storage. So a RAM stores smaller amount of data. A RAM stores smaller amount of data as I've said earlier. So while a hard disk stores much larger amount of data, typically 80 gigabytes to 1000 gigabytes, even more than that nowadays, hard disk that we have. So RAM also, a RAM, once again, temporary. It has temporary storage of files and programs. It stores data, it stores files and programs temporarily, not permanently, while a hard disk stores data, and anything stores in it is stored in it permanently. While a RAM has a little like your real desktop. Little like your real desktop has only your current work on it, which could be ruined by a spill of coke or coffee. So another way of saying that, whenever your system turns off, the all the things stored in a random access memory will be wiped out, while a hard disk still remains. Anything stored in a hard disk, whether the computer loses the power supply, anything stored in it is permanent. It will remain. So the contents of a RAM disappear when you turn off the power to the computer, as I just said. So while contents remain when you turn off the power to the computer and a hard disk, so it doesn't affect it. Contents disappear when the computer crashes. Contents disappear when if the computer crashes, then the content in a RAM disappears. While in a hard disk, contents remain when the computer crashes. So you can see the difference. Then in a RAM consists of chips. RAM consists of chips, microprocessors, while a hard disk consists of hard disks. It consists of platters. So, in a RAM, when you want to use a program, a temporary copy is put into RAM, and that's a copy you use. When you want to use a program, a temporary copy is put into RAM, and that's the copy you use. While a hard disk, it holds the original copy of the program. It can hold the original copy of the program, so that whenever you turn on the computer the next time, you can use it again. So that's just the difference between RAM and a hard disk. So now let's talk about uh, output devices. Let's talk about output devices. So after talking about the output devices, we're going to stop this video, and then we're going to meet in the next video. So now let's talk about the hard output units. So an output device is any piece of equipment or hardware equipment used to communicate the results of data processing carried out by an information processing system such as a computer. It converts the electronically generated information into human readable form, into the form that a human understands. So, the examples of output devices that we have are the CRT, the monitor, the CRT monitor, the TFT monitor, monitors in general, a laser printer, the printers, all types of printers, the speakers, all types of speakers, um, multimedia projectors, plotters, and so on and so forth. So these are the basic examples of output devices, starting from the monitor, the printers, projectors, the printers, the speakers, and so on and so forth, and the plotters also, which are used to print out graphical images. So examples of output devices, as I've mentioned, we have a monitor here, LCD, which is liquid crystal display, most familiar these days. Um, CRT, cathode ray tube, which is the earlier types of monitors that we have, which is not common nowadays. And now to printer. A printer, what is a printer? A printer transfers data from a computer onto paper. The work of a printer is to transfer data from a computer onto paper. And we have different types of printers. So we have laser printer, we have inkjet printer, we have dot matrix printer. So so we're going to stop here, and then in the next slide we're going to talk about the software. We're going to talk about software and other stuffs in more detail. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please just take a minute to subscribe to this channel and like this video, and let's meet in the next video. Thank you.